Hello, friend. The virus from China spreads to other countries and the whole world froze in anticipation of the possible consequences. However, if you look at what is happening from a historical point of view, it turns out that this is not the first disease that originated in China. Why are new diseases still emerging in this country? We will try to answer this question. An epidemic of severe acute respiratory syndrome, also known as SARS, occurred in China and other countries in 2002 and 2003. While the disease was spreading throughout China, the government decided not to inform the World Health Organization about the rapid growth of the infected. This was kept secret until February 2003 to keep remnants of public confidence in the ways the government fought the problem. This has led to the spread of the virus in other countries. Therefore, in January 2020, during the active phase of infection, rumors appeared that China was hiding the true scale of the disease. But why do so many dangerous viruses appear in the middle state? Recently, virologist Dr. Joseph Furr decided to remind the whole world that every day the human body is fighting millions of particles of the virus. Most of them cannot easily get into our body. For this to happen, two conditions are needed, which occur at the same time: weak immunity, unable to cope with the impending threat, and the ability of the virus to develop in the new biosystem. It is noteworthy that during both diseases in both 2002 and 2019, the risk group consisted of older people who had health problems and therefore low immunity before the epidemic. However, the viability of the virus did not come out of nowhere. The virus already known to science can create new mutations that lead to the emergence of a new strain. Often in one organism there are several mutations of one virus. In this case, the disease will spread much faster because our immune system has not developed a defensive response to the new disease and its possible mutations. Looking at the source of the virus originating in China, it can be safely stated that the ideal way to get infected is, among other things, contact with wild animals. The virologist Matthew Billiker claims that in the family of viruses that doctors are currently struggling with around the world, there are three main groups. The first and second are viruses caused by mammals, and the third by birds. The infamous seafood market in one of the Chinese cities has proved that the virus can be transmitted from animals to humans. A new disease was created on the live animal market. According to preliminary information, the disease was transmitted to humans by a live snake. People's appetite for meat products is growing. Along with this, the animal husbandry sector is growing. Viruses such as influenza are usually transmitted to humans from domesticated animals, so the risk of infection is constantly increasing. In China, meat and live animal markets are very common, especially in densely populated areas. This may explain why the last two global diseases appeared there. In addition, as cities grow, suburban residents often have contact with wildlife. In this way, for example, Lassa fever spread. Farmers were felling forests for arable fields, and the rats that lived there moved to their homes, which resulted in an outbreak. China is a country with a huge baggage of various traditions that date back to distant antiquity. Many of them are also associated with food. For example, in China, the tradition of eating raw meat of rare animals is still alive. This is considered an indicator of the prestige of a person and his financial situation, as well as good health. Such a national obsession with raw food goes beyond the limits of common sense. Many Chinese are ready to eat various fish or animals alive. And when it comes to viruses, in some cases, even heat treatment of meat may not be enough to get rid of pathogens. At the aforementioned market, you could taste, among others, quick bat soup. According to Yang Song-Huing, a public health expert at the U.S. International Relations Council, eating everything that is alive is an important part of Chinese culture, and nothing can be done about it. However, interest in wild animals is not just about emphasizing your social status. Rare animal species are also often used in traditional Chinese medicine to create medicines for many diseases. Such practices are based on constant poaching, as a result of which many rare animal species simply die. It is also known that trade in animals at the market is illegal, and therefore there can be no question of maintaining any sanitary standards. There is also another theory on the internet that viruses do not appear in China for natural reasons, but are artificially created in laboratory conditions so that, as they say, the rich become even richer. We are not going to negate or prove that this theory makes sense, but if you have confirmed information about it, you can write about it in the comments. Either way, assuming it's true, China remains the perfect place to spread various viral diseases. According to government media, the version about eating contaminated meat is by far the most likely, but the reason for such rapid spread throughout the world of the virus is quite different. Planes, trains, and cars allow any virus to explore half the world in less than 24 hours. According to statistics from the International Air Transport Association, within just a few weeks of the outbreak of the disease, infections were reported in over 16 countries. In 2019, airlines around the world carried 4.5 billion passengers. Just 10 years ago, the figure was almost half the size of 2.4 billion. It should also be taken into account that the epicenter of the disease has become a city that is an important transport hub in the Chinese high-speed rail network. The virus outbreak in China happened on the eve of the world's largest wave of population movement, namely during New Year's holidays. During this time, hundreds of millions of Chinese people go to other cities to see relatives. One of the most massive diseases in history has spread in a similar way. Spanish flu, also known as Spanish. It began during the Great Migration of entire nations associated with the end of the First World War. In this way, the virus could get to regions where people lived without having developed resistance to this disease. Historians estimate that it took about 9 months for the Spanish to spread around the world. Nowadays, when one day is enough to travel the whole world, viruses have much more opportunities to spread. And we are not ready for new viral challenges. Through globalization and transport development, even the most distant parts of our planet are connected together like never before. And yet there is still no global healthcare system capable of responding to the threat of massive infections. In the fight against diseases that spread rapidly, they usually relied on the actions of the governments of the countries that are the sources of the infection. If the virus was not dealt with in China, all humanity is at risk. But how do you deal with it, especially with the population density of the middle state? Every day there are more people on Earth, it is a fact. And the population will only grow. Accordingly, population density is also increasing. This means that pathogens are easier and faster transferred from person to person. In addition, even if we know that the disease is already at our fingertips, we often cannot predict exactly where and when it will start to take appropriate preventive measures in time. Therefore, every new epidemic is a surprise to the whole world. Despite the rate at which the virus spreads, no one has been able to predict its scale. Currently, the forecast has already appeared and is very worrying. On March 11, the World Health Organization announced a global pandemic for this virus. This fact puts the Chinese virus in line with such terrible diseases of the world as plague and cholera, so the danger is really serious. According to the head of the organization, Tedros Ghebreyesus, who is concerned about both the level of spread of the disease and the scale of powerlessness against it. The organization last announced this status in 2009 during the spread of swine flu. For now, it remains only to hope that humanity will finally find a way to defeat the new virus as soon as possible. Write in the comments if you liked it. You can like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon to not miss interesting materials.